name is Randy Eggert, and this is for the class, Grammar and Stylistics. In this presentation, we're going to be talking about argument structure or global coherence, the shape of an argument paper. And so we're going to be kind of thinking of this like a house, but it's a house on stilts, where the main part of the house, that's your main argument. That's the thesis of the paper. And then it's got the piles or columns supporting it. That's kind of like the sections of the paper. And then below that, you've got the deep foundation. That's the actual paragraphs that make up the paper. Now, in guidebooks and in composition classes, you'll often be told that the shape of an argument should be like an hourglass, where you begin at this level of generalization, you gradually get more and more specific until you get to the middle of the body of the paper, and then you broaden out again and get more and more general by the end of the paper. Now, that's not a bad description of what an argument looks like, except for it's a simplification. So we're going to complicate it a bit. What I want to say is that there's more contour to it. There are hierarchies of this shape. The same shape gets replicated throughout the paper. So you've also got this in sections, where the section gets gradually more and more precise and then broadens out again. And each section will do that. I put in 3 sections, but who knows? You know, it depends on the length of the paper. It depends on the complexity of the argument you're making, how many sections you need, how much support you need for your house. And then within each section, there are going to be paragraphs. And the paragraphs, likewise, go in this kind of hourglass shape of getting being more general and then getting more specific and then generalizing out again. So the reality of the structure of an argument is more jagged and contoured than we're usually taught. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind is that arguments are organized around points. Points can be considered like claims. We're making a claim, and the reader may or may not agree with it, but they're going to want you to support your claim. They're going to want you to persuade them about your claims. And when we talk about points, these are sentences that we can actually point to. All right, now that's important to keep in mind, that every time that we talk about a point, this is a sentence that can be pointed to in the paper itself. So, there's the main point of the paper. And this is what generally gets referred to as the thesis statement of the paper. But I'd like to think of it as the main point. This is the point that you want your readers to take away from the paper. If they forget everything else in the paper, you want them to be able to remember what you said in that one sentence, what your claim was. Now, this is going to show up twice in the paper. It's not going to be exactly the same sentence. It's going to be worded differently, but the claim is going to be the same both times that you make it. So once in the introduction and once in the conclusion. The main point of a paper is the thesis. The thesis should be a single sentence that clearly states what the writer wants the reader to take away from the paper. Readers expect to find the thesis near the beginning of the paper in the introduction and near the end of the paper in the conclusion. If it were a really short paper, you wouldn't need to say it twice, but if it's a longer paper, like around 8 to 10 pages, you got to say it twice. You got to remind the reader again at the end what the main point is. Then, at a deeper level, are the section points. Those are like the piles that support the house. And each section point, again, you should be able to point to it. You should be able to identify it in the paper. So we can go through and we can say, yep, there's a section point, there's a section point, and there's a section point. Each section point should be there to support the thesis, the main point of the paper, right? It's there as support, and how many supports you need depends on your argument. It's how much you need in order to convince the reader that this is a good point that you're making, the main point, the thesis. Readers look for the point of the section towards the beginning of the section. A section point should be one clear, concise sentence. And then, supporting each section point is a paragraph point. Right? So again, we've got this now, this deeper level, our deep foundation that's supporting the section point. Each paragraph of the section is there to support the main point of the section. Again, readers want to easily find the main point of each paragraph in a single clear sentence. They don't want to have to hunt for it. And if they do, you lose them. And finally, the main point of each paragraph is supported by sentences. So now we're going to get to that deeper level and look at paragraph structure. So the paragraph structure looks kind of like this. Generally, there's going to be a transition that brings you from the previous paragraph into this paragraph. It may be just a phrase. It could be just a preposition phrase, could be even just a word. But usually there's going to be something to transition from one paragraph to the next. And then there's the point sentence. And usually the readers can expect to see that right there at the top of the paragraph. Usually the first or maybe the second sentence is the point sentence. And then you're going to have reasons supporting that point. And again, the number of reasons may differ from paragraph to paragraph. I put 2 reasons in, but there may be 3, there may be 4, there may be 5. It depends on, how much work you need to persuade the reader of your claim. And then there's got to be evidence supporting each reason. Now, the reason might be a sentence all by itself, or it may be just a phrase. It might be the main clause in a sentence, and then the evidence is the subordinate clause. Right? There's lots of ways of doing this. But again, the reader is looking for the point sentence, and then they're going to be looking for reasons to support that point, that claim, and then they're going to be looking for evidence to support the reasons. I'll talk more about what counts as evidence in a future presentation. Right now, I want to go back, though, and look at the more precise shape of an argument. Because the idea is that if you write your paper well, with clear points all throughout at these different levels of hierarchy, then the reader should be able to skim the paper easily and figure out what your argument is without reading every sentence and without reading every paragraph and so on, that they should be able to skim through there and get the gist of your argument. That's the sign of a well-structured, well-organized argument. And you can do this on your own in your own reading. You'll see that when it's a really good paper, you should be able to skim through it and identify each part of the argument and how it all fits together to form this big coherent whole house.